Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop's Rate of Rise series, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee roaster. We have elevated conversations on roasting here at Rate of Rise. See what I did there? But we have done over 30 of these episodes, and today's episode adds to the library of content focused on roasting, craft, science, and business. And I'm glad that a lot of you out there have expressed you find value in these. One of the things that makes this possible is our sponsor. That is millcityroasters.com. So Mill City Roasters, they are, I think, probably one of the most important sources of coffee roasting education out there in coffee today. They have unrivaled support for their clients. They have deeply researched and practical, effective education for people wanting to learn how to roast. And of course, their roasters that they produce in Minneapolis, Minnesota are incredibly intuitive, innovative, and have been designed in a way that improves upon every little detail and functionality. They obsess over it, and the end product is something that you use as a roaster, and you can see the care and the quality that goes into it the same way you want your customers to feel that about your coffee. That's how they feel about coffee roasters. So go check them out at millcityroasters.com. Now, today's episode is going to be featuring the co-founder of Purefi Coffee in Spring, Texas, Chris Johnson. He's also the lead roaster, and they use the service of specialty coffee roasting to mentor the next generation and to partner with local and global initiatives that create positive change in the world. He enjoys roasting coffee and aims to excel at highlighting the quality and consistency of each coffee sourced. And Chris's passion is relationships and to infuse simplicity and connection with everything that he does and everything that they do at Purefi Coffee. This is a personal journey just as much as a professional journey. And it's something that Purefi has been pursuing, which is, again, this idea of mentorship and relationships, simple processes to create profound differences and meaning in the world of coffee through coffee roasting. And so in this conversation with Chris, we get to chat about the genesis of this business, his own career development, and then the approach that he takes to roasting, working with people in the roasting operation, what it looks like to operate a brew bar for his coffee and have a wide variety of coffee on tap that people can experience, and some of the challenges and great accomplishments that they've had over the years of doing this business. So if you're a coffee roaster, or if you're just interested in coffee roasting, I think Chris's journey, learnings, approach to coffee and people is going to be refreshing and help you in your business. So let's get right to it. Here now is my conversation with Chris Johnson of Purefi Coffee Roasters. Well, Chris, welcome to Keys to the Shop. How's it going today?
It's going well.
Glad to have you on the show. We pass each other at trade shows, and I see you out in the world of Instagram. So, I'm glad to get you on the show to talk about roasting. And I guess my first question, of course, is for especially people who tend to be a little bit more focused on the roasting side of things. And the focus of roasting is very particular. Like, what brought you to roasting specifically, and what do you love about it?
It's a great question. It's a little bit loaded. When I got into coffee. I wasn't already in coffee. I was looking for something to do that would allow me to be in a place where I could, have a bigger impact. And the impact for me was sharing my personal testimony. So coffee was kind of that avenue. So with coffee being the avenue, I was looking at different ways that you could tap into the coffee industry. And to be honest, it seemed more cost effective. I just wanted to be involved in coffee. I didn't exactly know how. And roasting, being able to maybe get a roaster, find a space, and I could do it all myself to start seemed more feasible than a coffee shop with an espresso machine and staff and all the things I hadn't tapped into yet. So that's really what led me into coffee roasting. I wouldn't know that I would fall in love with it it just kind of meshed with my personality of being specific and kind of caught up in details and enjoying the process of watching like small changes have the effects they have. I compared to when I used to wait tables. I looked up and it was 6 years later and I was still waiting tables. It's just because like you just get lost in the sauce. It wasn't that I loved waiting tables. It was just that like the process being a slow turnaround, like to fix a roast, it could be a week because you got to let it rest. You got to taste it. You don't want to make changes too early. So like the process of turnaround for change kind of kept me longer, kept me intrigued, and it kind of fit my personality. Hope that answers.
Oh yeah, totally. And coffee was sort of a thing that was you were exposed to just because people around you were drinking coffee, and you were involved in an environment that. Did you know a coffee roaster that?
Great question, man.
Yeah.
The quick version, and I could go into more depth at a later time because I don't want to spend too much time on it. But I actually made some bad choices, and I had ended up in adult timeout. We'll call it that. And I'm always transparent about this. This is part of me wanting to be in coffee so I can have a platform to share these things. But it was in that place where I had the idea of doing something and coffee came up. So no, I didn't know anybody in coffee when the thought came. Matter of fact, the coffee I had drank up to that point was like a liquid candy bar. You know, like that's the coffee to me, like that I wanted. It seemed more like a purposeful pursuit that eventually, when I came home from adult timeout, being in the city of Houston, I was able to find, I think the shop was called Southside Espresso. They're no longer around. The owner, Sean, is still around in the coffee industry in Houston doing great things. But I went in there and had a flat white and had my mind blown. I was like, wow, wait a second. Okay, so this can actually fulfill my desire for a platform I've been able to share, but it can also taste like this. And so it was like every time I would peel back a little bit more, I was very like relational. Like I immediately tried to get the owner's name, and I'm not afraid to kind of mingle. So it wasn't really a shop or a roaster that I knew. It was just a desire to do coffee, thinking that coffee was this gold mine, which now it's funny. It's the grind. It's a lot of hustle, but it's fulfilling. And then when I came home, experiencing that flat white with no sugar in it, how good it was, that really kind of spurred me into like, okay. And I have a little bit of, I guess, like confidence in myself to do a good job. And so I thought, man, I can do that. And so that's really how it began. And I just kind of started diving into, like, my wife was 8 months pregnant. We went up to Nashville for Coffee Fest, drove all the way up there, took roasting class with Fire Dancer up at the Probat facility in Libertyville. And so I was meeting people as I was at these places and making sure that I was getting involved in what they're doing. And sometimes that looked like me helping them for free, but it was me getting the opportunity to kind of, wow, okay, so this is how it is. All right. This is what I can expect. Wow, you can make it taste like this, And so, yeah, that's kind of, I guess, my connection and how I was connected to coffee.
I love that confidence. And when you talked earlier, you were mentioning this attention to detail. And when you're collecting all this information by, conversations or, taking classes and getting your hands involved in the craft of roasting coffee, what did you walk away from those? Like, how did you synthesize all that to, like, this is Chris's way of roasting coffee, your first framework and approach to coffee roasting? How would you describe that?
I think it really kind of tied into my personality. And my personality, I probably get it from my dad, but very, very particular, somewhat organized, systematic. And so also mixed with a little bit of fear of not wanting to exclude any customers. And with that being said, I began learning about like the flavor wheel and the different parts of it. And so for me, being a math guy, I took that flavor wheel, and we're hoping to drop our new website soon, which will actually talk more about this. This has kind of been on the backside, but how we source is we took the flavor wheel and we broke it out into 6 sections at that time, understanding that roasting starts on that floral and earthy side, if it has it, and works towards the roastiness and the spiciness and savory typically. So we have like a fruity floral section, a fruit bomb section. We have a sweet with fruit acidity. We have sweet with no acidity. And so basically, I took these different characteristics of the cup and began to kind of roast accordingly
Yeah.
by just cupping over and over and tasting what the difference was. Because what I found that was tough for me at the beginning, I got a roaster that was a no name roaster. I bought it from a guy on Instagram. Wasn't the best decision, but I mean, he flew me where he was. We had time on the roaster he had. I was sold on the deal, but it became somewhat of a nightmare. And I say that to say, like, I used to like dive into the industry for advice, but if I would have just did what the industry was showing me and not cup coffee and taste and make changes, and then cup coffee and taste and see what those changes did, I wouldn't have been able to like tailor make my roast to my current like super long stack. So I basically had like a 34-foot stack, my first roaster, which meant my airflow at the beginning had to be so high in order for the column weight to not weigh against the roasting,
Yeah.
which takes away from the soaking. So these ideas that were in the industry, I couldn't exactly apply them. But I think like for me, it was trying to include everyone so that if someone walked into our roastery, they would at least have one cup of coffee they would enjoy,
Yeah.
even if they like dark roast. So we have one dark roast. So in an effort to offer coffee to the masses where nobody's excluded, it began on my journey. I began on my journey of trying to break it down to simplify it, break it into sections. Now I can reach out to my importers or the farmers and like, what kind of profile you're looking for. I would share the section breakdown with them. I'm trying to replace section 2, and so they would find coffees that were fulfilling that section.
Smart.
Yeah.
You have all these people that you want to include. I mean, obviously, this is kind of a hospitality industry,
Right.
and I think I see even today growing popularity of that idea of that our menu is a place for people to land, where these palates are varied. You know, people have different tastes, different histories with coffee, and not every roaster is required to be all things to all people, and I don't even think that's what you're doing.
Right.
But I like the way you've broke it down, and it sounds like the constraints that you had by buying a roaster on Instagram, with all of its limitations, kind of made you a better roaster because it forced you to be the thing that was in control rather than the roaster.
It definitely developed my palate. It allowed me to block out all the white noise that you get from the industry about what's hip and what's cool and what to do. It also like showed me who my industry friends were. Like I can drop some names like Brent Patton over at Camino up in Nacogdoches. He would come down when we have issues. Logan Allender at Atlas Coffee Club, the head of coffee, he would come down when we have issues. And these are people that I had volunteered for Roasters Village at Coffee Fest, my first event, and I had met them by just serving. And so now they're coming and answering these airflow questions. Mark Michelson comes down and he
Yeah.
does a class down at the shop, and we're talking about the column weight. But it definitely did cause me to like I wasn't going to give up. I needed to figure out a way around it. And so now, we have this different roaster now that has a shorter vent stack, but I understand the theory to apply things now and pass it on to the team members here who roast as well. And so I am very appreciative. Our hashtag is actually changed by the flame. And so Purify, the name is the idea of my testimony I just gave you about me going away to a place that I didn't want to be in. When I went away, I was not enjoyable. Nobody wanted to be around me. I burned every bridge. It's similar to green coffee. Before the green coffee goes in the roaster, it's of no use, very little use. And once you pull it out of this very hot drum with paddles and airflow, like what was happening to me when I was in my fire, you get purified. And so when
Mm.
you come out of the roaster, now we have attributes that are enjoyable that people actually want to be around, that people gather around, like it was for me when I came out of that place I didn't necessarily want to be in. It was best for me, and now I'm enjoyable. I've been changed by the flame. So that's like our hashtag. So
Nice.
as like roasters, we want to take coffee and highlight their characteristics, not force our desires on them, but find out and get to know them. The coffee, even people, we tie it to people too before we try to roast the coffee or roast the people. No, before we roast the coffee or before we like get to know people and stuff like that.
That's great. The refining
Yeah.
fire. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You touched on something where you mentioned it a couple of times where there's the people come into the roastery and they drink coffee. And there's a retail expression of Purify. Talk a little bit about how that came about after you started the roastery. Was that right away where you started inviting people into the roastery, like from the get go, or did that come later?
Yeah. That came later. And one reason why I was excited that you invited me to be on this podcast is because, once again, the opportunity for a platform to be transparent. And there's a lot of people out there that need to be encouraged because they see the glitz and glamour of social media, but they're discouraged about what's in front of them. We would have served coffee from day one if I could have afforded it. But I didn't know at the beginning how much to ask for from my initial investor. And I found out it wasn't enough. So we've been like, and because coffee quality is of most importance to me, of course, in people, I didn't pivot to serving drinks right away. And I think that as I grew as a roaster, we began getting wholesale accounts with machine suppliers because we were having cafes, we were helping out, and then it made more sense for me to be able to offer that. Also, it's part of another part of the reason why we that we serve our coffee. We've always done farmers markets because my idea at the beginning was to use farmers markets to mentor young men. We've partnered with some of the local high schools, and we've hired some of the kids, and some have already graduated and gone off to college, that may have started with us at like 12 or 13, and some are still around that started later. But expressing the coffee for us, we do things a little bit different. We have all of our coffees on espresso. I believe that if you treat any coffee in a particular way, you can get something enjoyable in espresso. We offer all of our coffees as slow pour options, as pour overs. We won't have a drive through in the building, and we're not going to be the fastest because we want to use this platform as a way to share how we brew coffee, and that's not rushed. That's with intentionality, and so it helps us to create that space where we get to, I guess, present our coffee because we roast particularly, and I think this is a question for later on, but one of our biggest things we're trying to develop when we roast is sugars. One of the things I run into more often than not in the specialty industry is like coffee that's just roasted real fast and real light and just very volatile in the cup. And being where I am on the outskirts of the city, we don't have those quirky coffee drinkers that will drink that all day as much. And so we need something with a little bit more backbone. But I didn't want to go all the way into development and developing carbon notes or any type of smokiness unless that's what we're going for. So this makes sure having the cafe here allows us to make sure we're hitting that target.
Yeah.
But it is a little different though because I'm not trying to get lost and become a cafe. I forgot to mention we were in a warehouse that they had increased the rent like almost twice as much.
Oh,
I was one of the first tenants in that warehouse. I knew the guy who built it, and then he sold it to a big development company, and they came in and just did what you have to do as a big company. You have to pay for more people, and so it's going to cost more. And so we found a new spot, which is where I'm at now, but we lost 1,000 square feet. But what we gained was a lot of car traffic. And so just trying to, okay, we've lost some square footage. We can be more efficient with our spacing, but let's capitalize on the opportunity to share what we're doing with the roaster now.
yeah.
And so it's fairly new. Like we just added a matcha like 2.5, 3 months ago. It's strictly coffee in here. We
Nice.
have a couple of treats from a local cafe that we supply coffee for as well. But really slow growth is what we're looking for, slow and steady, nothing super fast. But
I like the model a lot because you get the feedback from customers drinking espresso and pour overs of the coffee you're roasting. So you cut your teeth through cupping and tasting and developing these between batch protocols for quality control, and then you have the expression of the coffee on the bar. Not all customers are going to use the same language as a coffee professional, but their emotions around that coffee certainly would help you know whether or not you're hitting the mark on a coffee. I imagine there's times where you've made adjustments on some of the roast profiles of the coffees based on how they've performed on the bar?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's a big topic. Like one thing we for sure been like, oh wow, what was that? And so we pick up our phone and we may contact one of our wholesale partners. And it could be good or bad. Like it could be, wow, that 42-second shot of that Congolese coffee is like kiwi juice. And so we'll communicate that directly with our wholesale customers who maybe offer that on espresso. So they're able to make those adjustments and then experience that same thing. On the other end, we are able to see what coffees people are coming in and asking to do another pour over of, or when they come in, like, no, I like that, but I'm looking more so for this direction. So yeah, it definitely gives us an opportunity to get some like real live feedback.
Yeah, yeah, good. And on the roasting journey, your personal roasting journey, when you started with this roaster, when you upgraded to another roaster, what was the roaster you upgraded to, and how did that change the way that you approached roasting? I'm sure this your skills and tasting still are there, but then the process and the order of things might have adjusted a little bit. How was it an upgrade, and maybe how was it also a challenge?
Oh, it was a huge challenge for there were basically three pivots we had made so far. I'm hoping in the future we get another roaster, but it wouldn't necessarily be a bigger one. Probably be the same size. But I started on the Artisan 2.5, which is straight up convectional heat. Actually, the lofting done for the beans, nothing is touching much. So it's all convectional heat. I'd probably say 80/20. So you got a therm probe sitting in there that's not in full contact with beans. I've got a graph and I'm making all these notes that are just not as consistent. And that one did maybe 3 pounds max in one batch. Then I moved to a 12 kg roaster in a facility with this huge vent stack. So it's kind of a benefit because I'm roasting with this fluid bed roaster. And when I moved to it was called Datgen, Datgen. When I moved to this roaster, the challenge with the vent stack was actually kind of a piece of cake for me to swallow because I had been roasting convectional already. So looking back in hindsight, that probably made that pivot a little bit easier because I had to roast with the airflow pretty high. So anytime air even has a weight, right? Depending on the temperature, it's heavier or lighter because of the moisture in it. And also what temperature of air are you trying to push through it? If the temperature of air you're trying to push through is hotter than it, it's like a storm. When you have hot and cold, especially if it's cold outside, there's going to be resistance. And so basically because it was 34 foot, until I had my VFD of my roasting air to a certain frequency, it wouldn't break through the weight of that column stack. And in turn, it would push air out my trier. So it would actually reverse the flow of air.
Yeah.
And so I had to start rather than, the whole close your dampener, air down, soak at the beginning. I couldn't do that because it was blowing. It would even blow the beans out the trier just because of that. So I had to like start at 50 RPMs or VFD revolutions or 50% and then work my dampener from there. So basically the column weight forced me to not be able to have the gentle soaking portion at the beginning that a lot of roasters that are maybe trying to develop espresso or coffees with more volume and viscosity, they have found that doing that at the beginning just kind of cooks the beans a little more efficiently.
Yeah. And could you tell a difference in the coffee once you upgraded the roaster and made those adjustments? Was it an upgrade in terms of consistency? What did you notice about that?
Taste wise, it was kind of night and day different. I wouldn't say bad, but I'm like, okay, this is different. I need to learn this. Development percentage times needed to change because convectional and conduction heat at that time treated different. So taste wise, I would say it stayed. If I was scoring it, it would be similar in score, but different in presentation, which was still a problem for me because I had a customer base that was expecting a particular thing, but things started to change. But luckily at that time, I worked in construction and I had two groups of people in my phone. It was Group A and Group B, and Group A got the coffee menu one week and Group B got the coffee menu the other week. And so I didn't have that big of a clientele when I made this jump either. So it was a little bit more forgiving. because of how small the first roaster was, I couldn't get too many wholesale accounts that way. But the biggest thing was going from a 3 pound batch to at least a 15 pound batch with the same amount of customers. And what am I going to do with it? So that was kind of the challenge of being able to go through with it.
You mentioned how you said you would score them the same if you were going to just judge them, they would reach the same score, but that you have to worry about your customer base because they're expecting something from you, that consistency. And it made me think, it's almost like your mind can find good things about the coffee, even though there's a difference that would make you score it similarly, but a customer might score it lower because it's
Hmm.
different. And I don't know, that's just my first thought. Like, where you might say, no, this is still like what, 85, 87 or whatever. The customer's like, well, something bad happened. You're like, no, you got to open your mind.
Yeah,
So how do
I
you
feel that.
approach transitioning customers through coffees when their judgment of a coffee maybe not as forgiving as yours?
Man, I think it's through conversation, and that's been one of the toughest things as we grow. We're not super big, but the bigger we get, I don't get to have those one-on-one conversations. I just had a tasting right before this with a new coffee trailer, and we were tasting espresso, and they kept trying to like almost like shield me from feeling bad about a coffee they didn't like, and I had to tell them like coffee is subjective. If you say that that tastes bad, I know what you mean. You don't like it. It does not mean that it's not good, and it's not a bad thing. Uh, because you are the customer. No, I'm not out here trying to roast what everybody around me wants, but you are the type of customer we enjoy. These are the type of coffees we have, and this is inside of our lineup what I think you will enjoy. But if you don't, it's not a bad thing. It's all subjective, and this kind of taps into like the cupping sheet that they've created. I actually like it because I think it makes importing the language between coffee producers and importers more difficult. I agree with that because in order for me and you to talk, we both got to know English. And so, in order for them to talk, there should be some sort of agreed upon scoring system
Yeah.
where it is objective. But the new scoring system being subjective really makes us consider our customers rather than what we like. And I try to teach our team and practice myself that when I'm cupping with someone in mind and not myself.
Hmm.
And so therefore it allows for me to, even before they had that second grading sheet, we had our own in-house sheet. And it was very simple. It was 0 through 5. 0 was I don't like that, and 5 was like, wow, that's better than I expected. And so as we were cupping, and we would have scores, and we all score it, and we can see how coffees have developed. And our liking it is dependent upon our purpose for that coffee,
Wow.
not if I like it. And so some people are able to do that easier. We still have people on the team that are like, man, I, I just don't like that coffee. That's cool, but how do we make that coffee taste better to represent what we're trying to do with that coffee?
Hmm.
Because someone likes that coffee a particular way, and you don't like it that particular way. Nobody's wrong. And I guess it's kind of on us. Do we want to keep serving them or not? And if we do, then we should consider their preferences as well.
Yeah. I love that idea that, there's room for everybody's taste, and separating personal preference and customer preference. It almost makes me wonder, do you find yourself after all this time having your own personal preferences influenced by how empathetic you have to be towards your customers? In other words, like you would never have given a one coffee like that's my favorite coffee, but because you started to really exercise this thought of, but I really want, Gary or Sarah to like that coffee, right? And by giving it a shot and room in your brain, maybe it gave you even more of an appreciation where you wouldn't have thought it years ago, but today you would reach for that cup just to enjoy yourself. Like your own enjoyment's expanded because you've been thinking about other people's enjoyment.
You're preaching. That's exactly what happens. And I think like that's what happens when you have conversations with people. Whenever you take time to, I don't know, spend time with people, you begin to, you have the opportunity to enjoy something you didn't even know that you would have enjoyed before. And
Mm.
so I'd say that's a yes. It's kind of like whenever your parents make you eat certain things and then you realize, wait a second, that's not so bad. Matter of fact, I find myself wanting that. The coffees, and I will say that they have changed, and part of it's because of age. The cold ferments that used to make me crazy now make my stomach hurt. So we might get a cup or two in. But I might want that, very basic red Catuai Brazil sometimes. When before it wouldn't have been on my radar at all
Yeah.
because I was too concerned with, the experimental things. So I'd say yeah. Uh, I, even maybe not as much dark roast, but I'd say yeah for sure.
Yeah. Well, I would love to know a little bit about your staff and approach to bringing people in to help with, we've talked about a personal journey of coffee and approach to coffee, teaching others, working with others that have access to the internet, and they can see these other like really cool places that are doing cool things. And it's not necessarily wrong to be inspired by that, but you know, training people to be on point for what you're doing while also celebrating the culture broadly and making sure consistency is there with a group of people at the helm is a little bit more of a challenge. How do you
Yeah,
manage people and keep things focused?
man. If I'm being transparent, that is an area we need to improve on. Definitely an area we need to improve on. And I would say that also, not but, and our coffee is tasting good going out the door.
Mm.
Reason that is because I haven't done as good as like, and this is something I'm working on as a leader now, but creating systems and protocols because there's a part of me that feels that takes the human nature out of
Oh, yeah.
someone being able to express that coffee how they want to. Being in a place, I forgot the word, but where you can basically build your own kingdom, it's kind of frowned upon because you need a system. You need to remove thinking so you can move efficient. But it's like we're in the phase of trying to create that because we're bringing people on. But back to what I was saying, I've luckily hired people with integrity,
Yeah.
and that cup is very important to them, even to the point where if I'm hindering them from being able to do a good job, I can tell they're mad at me. And they don't have to be like that. Like if we have green coffee that's taken a long time to get in, our lead roaster is frustrated because he feels like he's not getting enough time to spend with that coffee to make it right.
Yeah.
So I would say that that's an area I actually lean on. There's a gentleman named Luke Wait with Pomelo.
Oh, yeah.
Great help. Phone call away. All that leadership stuff. He is helping me create these systems so that there's repeatability and consistency. Because the tough thing is when you have like, I think we have 9 coffees and we have 3 brewing devices. Like it's tough to have 3 times 9 and okay, we're going to do a lower temperature recipe. And so, like, I've had a lot of customers that actually come in, and one of them, their son works for us now, but she actually appreciated the fact that I give our team the liberty to be who they are. It's probably not the best practice. Like one barista who works today, he has a different style than the one who's going to work tomorrow.
Mm.
But the drinks that go out are great. They're made with love. We have a standard to follow, but since we have different coffees in the hopper at times, they have the liberty to express it how they want as
Yeah.
long as the finished product is still good. And we communicate to that to our community. So that does set us apart a little bit. Like when people come in, the first words are, "We are a roaster and we will have different coffees on bar all the time." So they're already okay. So things are going to change all the time here. My expectations are set. If we were a cafe, I think it'd be a little bit different because we have one espresso roast that we're dialing in, and we know that this is how much you're supposed to get out, and this is the temperature and pre-infusion. Rather than we have a blend today, and then tomorrow we're running like a anaerobic natural Colombian.
Yeah.
So it's like you got to know what temperature does, what pre-infusion does, all these things. And luckily, we have a team that kind of understands all that. I have literature all in the shop that they can read from the classes that I've taken and from people that come in. But I've had the good fortune of having a team that cares. They're all adults that work in here, but we're super small. It's only about 5 or 6 of us full timers, and then about 5 or 6 part-time.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I part of me, I think we're all on this. I like to call it like higher degrees of imperfection. We're just trying to be on this growth trajectory, which is different for all of us, just as different as maybe a coffee in the roaster requires different kind of curiosity and then teasing out the best qualities of it, right?
Mhm.
But I appreciate the idea that you saying we need to grow in this, but I would almost rather see somebody have to improve because of their sincere desire to avoid a non-human approach to working in coffee and coffee service and serving people than somebody who has to be dialed back from a super inhuman, very automated, very mechanical exchange of goods for services and that kind of thing. There's no life in it. So it
Mhm.
feels like there's the seed where you're starting from has is a or the soil that you're planted, let's say, is better in my opinion. So it's kind of refreshing to see also. Maybe this is a little a tangent, a philosophical tangent, but we see this now popping up on the internet and in coffee shops where comfort and connection, sincerity is kind of coming back or desired and being pursued instead of the, brutalist, sterile environments. We're starting to produce places where people want to be.
Yes.
Those human places. And in a roastery, of course, with your cafe, that's quite an obvious hospitality place. But even in a roastery, and I'm sure Luke would agree, in leadership in a roastery, that's a place too. And you have to find yourself in that place if you're working in a roastery. So it sounds like you're approaching hospitality from both angles, like in the roastery and in the cafe. So anyway, just kind of good work. I like where
That's
you're coming
yeah.
from.
And to comment on that, like that's one of the goals of our business. It's not our mission is not only for our community, but it's also for those that are going to be here. And I mentioned before, this business was started tied to my faith, and at the beginning, it was very faith driven. It's still faith motivated, but for the sake of peace, I did not want to create what they thought was a church, right? Like this is a platform that I use to share. I'm just talking about because I've been the only one. They have the platform to talk about things as long as they're good, right? And so like part of what we hope to do is create a safe space for those who want somewhere to work.
Hmm.
And I would say like I feel like coffee is like at the intersection of a lot of people's lives on the way to wherever they're going. There's a lot of doctors, there's a lot of athletes, there's a lot of whatever that have spent time in the coffee industry. And so we're just kind of catching them along the way. And I found that they don't stay long if there's unfortunately nothing for them to find joy in. And if the dial-in's already decided, the weigh-in on the pour-over is already decided, all the bags are weighed out, all I'm doing is checking people out, coffee industry will not be able to keep people. And I think that we also are seeing more people that are more connected to purpose than money. And they will live a life out as long as it has a purpose. They'll live by bare means, bare necessities because they feel fulfilled. And I'm hoping that we're able to keep, I call them all stars, guys that are overqualified to even work here for as long as possible
Yeah.
because they find purpose and they find safety. They could, like, they're up here and they're not even on the shift. They're kind of hanging out. And like, those are kind of signs for me that I'm creating kind of that safe space for people because the work I was in the workforce as well, and it's a little cutthroat. It's tough, and the word I was thinking about earlier was capitalist.
Hmm.
I'm not saying I'm for or against, but it does produce a like we're always trying to be better, be the better version, and all that stuff. Why can't we just be,
Hmm.
who we are rather than I always got to be improving. I always got to. And yes, we should push. I feel push towards improvement, but
Yeah.
not at the sake of like peace and contentment and joy or family. That's been one of the toughest things for me is being a father of four. And like, I wish I could travel to more events. I wish I could go to Origin more. I canceled multiple trips because our
Yeah.
house wasn't quite in order to leave. Because I feel like my calling as a father and a husband comes before this. And so like so I have to have things that I enjoy in this. And same thing for the people here that work for us. A lot of them have side gigs because coffee doesn't supply enough to sustain them, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
creating that purpose is a big joy for me.
I mean, you just kind of hit on something that I think operators, owners of cafes and roasteries should really consider when they think about, well, people, if they're looking for meaning and they're looking for vocation versus job, a calling, if you will, and they can, and sometimes you have to survive with meager means until something works out. That's true for owners and operators as much as it is for baristas. And when you think about not being able to do something, like I'm not going to go to San Diego's World of Coffee because I'm just like, it's not in the cards this year. It's not the right time, gauging family. And, my son's 12, turning 13. I'm feeling
Okay.
like, you know, that whole, like, you want to turn your heart toward home a little bit more as things,
Mm,
grow close to you. That's a fulfilling thing. And it's a motivator. It's a motivator for doing a good podcast or being a good consultant in other areas, just as much as being a great coffee roaster, a good business person, and a good boss
yeah.
is how you honor all of those people that look to you in some form, some role.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I've had to pivot because when I first started, the idea was serving the community. But I think as an owner, the best way I serve the community is I serve my staff. So if I
Mm,
serve them well, then there'll be an example and the resources for them to serve the community well. So,
yeah. Well, one last question I've got for you
mhm.
here is around the roastery operations and how you manage things right now. I know you said, well, systems, this is something we need to grow in,
Mhm.
but it is quite different today than it was before when you first started. And the growth has happened because of how you've managed it. There's obviously something you're doing that's working. How would you counsel somebody who is just starting their journey based on your experiences to help grow their roastery and things you did well and things that you would hope that they do better than you?
Okay, that's a great question. And one thing that pops off at the beginning is that same thing that I did at the beginning, trying to make sure I had something to offer for everyone. I'm grateful for that. But in hindsight, that was fear
Mm,
that was kind of motivating that. And it later on caused challenges because if I'm importing 9 coffees and as a small roaster, yeah, I might buy like 25-pound bags of each. But the moment it grows, and you got to buy 25 full bags of each. Now you're talking about a cash flow issue. So I would say, like, one word of advice is at the beginning, keep it simple, trying to not source too many beans at the beginning because it's kind of like shooting yourself in the foot at the end. Because you're going to have to either explain to your community why things are changing drastically,
mm,
or you're going to have to like work magic all the time, like trying to time this import or get this gap coffee because you didn't know you were going to have an increase in sales and now you're out of the coffee that should have lasted this long. And right when you're done with that, you're doing it again because you have, 7, 8 coffees in rotation. So that would be one thing. I always say I'm grateful that I didn't do a lot of research because I may have talked myself right out of getting into coffee. So I did a measure of research, but I really trusted kind of my gut and my desire to do it, and I had a partner that was on board as well.
Oh, those are great things to the advice to coffee shop or coffee roasters to, help grow their roasteries. I mean, there's a couple of things there I think that are really important. Like simplicity seems to be a big focal point for a lot of businesses today because there is maybe almost too much information out there. It's hard to know how to trust certain sources. And in, that's why I like Luke over at Pomelo Consulting is great for roasting. And maybe that's a good question right now for you is you've got knowledge of the industry. You're plugged in. You know what's available. How do you sort through what's the right information to draw in to influence your roastery?
That's a great question because it has changed over the years. Before I used to look at followers, oh, they got a whole bunch of followers. They must be
Mm,
doing something right. And then I would try to learn their styles and stuff. But for me now, it's just the proof is in the pudding. Make friends in the industry that are willing to walk the journey with you, taste their coffees, talk through what they're doing, and vice versa. Like the cup should show the result of what you're doing. And
yeah.
if you don't like what you're getting, the ability to not be fearful and reach out to those friends in the industry. I think I speak for most coffee professionals. We enjoy sharing what we know. So it would be beneficial to do that because then you would improve in a way that you don't get lost in the sauce. Because I feel bad. Like I have another company, and my wife and a good friend started that sells coffee equipment. We also work on roasters, hence the Loring shirt, and install and stuff like that. But they got a new like hand grinder. They got new stuff all the time,
Hmm.
dropping new brewing devices by new world brewer champions, and it's difficult. I don't think you should shut yourself all the way off to it because obviously you got into coffee because I enjoy that stuff, but also knowing that I have to stay focused on what's in front of me, and that's like what I'm roasting, making sure that I'm
Hmm.
cupping, making sure that we're tasting it often, reading books, and staying connected to people in the industry is
Yeah.
huge. Inviting people in to taste because for me, I'm probably more pessimistic than optimistic, and it actually has been the validation of those who I guess respect in the industry that has really given me the confidence I probably should have had a long time ago. So having those people around, and you'll be able to know who snakes are and who people are just there for
Oh
the
yeah.
return,
Yeah.
and just stay away from them.
Well, that's the interesting part of the industry too, is that when you are there at the trade shows, you've been doing Coffee Fest for 20 years, and you think everybody is great. You want to think everybody is great.
Yeah,
And it's just a cross section of humanity. And just like humans, there's not great and there's great. And you have to be willing to, trust some innate judgment that, if you waste time on the wrong source and the wrong people, you won't get that time back.
yeah.
So I like where you're coming from there. And frankly, when you think about brewing devices and different approaches to roasting, there's books that will conflict with one another. What's a person to do? You go on a forum and they say, well, have you tried this trick or that trick? Well, you get a little FOMO. You feel like, well, maybe my coffee could taste better and I need to
Hmm.
try this. But I almost think of it as like having a lot of really nice pens, but your journals are empty. You're, you got all these
Yeah,
tools, but you're not doing the thing. The thing is what fulfills just doing it and being about it.
yeah.
You won't be as tempted, I suppose. But this is a great conversation. I appreciate where you're coming from with your business and your philosophy on people and coffee. Where can people learn more about Purify and get tapped into your coffee and even visit the location there in Houston?
So if you visit our website, it's www.purificoffee, and Purify spells a little different because the main spelling wasn't available. And so I asked some friends on which one to go with. But it's spelled Purefi coffee .com. So on there, we have a very basic website. It has our coffees that are available currently. We are about to update that website that'll have a little more interactive connection to like our sections, and we also color coded the flavor wheel to our branding, and then on our labels you will see color coded indicators. It teaches about all that. But if you are not in Houston or the surrounding areas and can't make it to spring, we do offer all of our roasted options online. We do have some brewing devices that are available if you like to brew coffee at home. So that's one way. But if you are in the Houston and surrounding area, we're right on the north side, just before you get to the Woodlands, right outside of Houston. And we're roasting 3 to 5 times a week. We have a full cafe from 8 to 4. I say full cafe. We have coffee and treats and matcha and Wi-Fi and people ready to talk about coffee. 8 to 4, Monday through Saturday. Those hours are about to expand. We also do a couple farmers markets every weekend, and then we do mobile events for anybody that's looking for a specialty coffee setup. I guess and Instagram is a big place where we communicate a lot of things. We don't really do TikTok. I guess my age, I didn't have room to learn much more. Uh, but we have a very talented guy who's joined our team named Roger. He comes from film. He's been doing all the social media stuff, and he's so good. So we are working on a YouTube, getting our YouTube channel back up and running. So yeah, I would say Instagram, our online web platform, and if you're in Houston on the north side, stop through. We'd love to serve some coffee to you, talk coffee.
Excellent. Nice. Thanks, Chris. Really appreciate you.
No problem. I really, when I first began the journey, I began listening to your podcast. And I appreciate the tips you've been given and your commitment to the industry of trying to, what I feel overall, what you're doing is leveling the playing field where you're getting information out there that may have people that aren't owners would not know, but also owners that are looking for a better way to be better leaders. They can get a lot of info from your podcast and the people that you invite on it and the things that they say. So it definitely helped me, one, see how far I needed, how much growth I have, how much growth I need, how much ground I need to make up, and things I need to do better. But it also, like, there's things where I hear, I'm like, okay, I'm doing that right. That sounds like I'm not alone doing that or nice. Experiencing that. So yeah, I appreciate you as well.
Oh, thank you, Chris. Well, everybody, I hope that you enjoyed that episode. Go and check out Purefi Coffee Roasters on Instagram. It is just at Purefi Coffee Roasters handle, and then the pureficoffee.com. That's PUREFI coffee.com. Check out their offerings and stay plugged into all that they're doing there at Purefi. And a huge thank you to Chris for joining me on this episode. Again, this was one of those episodes where we really got to think about we think about the coffee. We do. We want the coffee to be very good. We want to be very technical with our roasting as a service to the people who are enjoying it, and also the people who we are employing to work that machine to brew the coffee and everything else. It is as much about relationships within the business as it is people's relationships with your coffee and with your business. So thank you, Chris, for inspiring us to keep that in focus, to pursue technical excellence and relational excellence as we go. So if you have any questions for me, don't forget, it's just chris@keystotheshop.com. And our sponsor today is Mill City Coffee Roasters at millcityroasters.com. So check those folks out as well. That's it for me. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time on another Rate of Rise series from Keys to the Shop.